and welcome to this edition of the Word of Power. I am your host, Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino, here for this video blog. And today I'm answering the question, what does being called look like? That probably sounds like a really loaded topic and a really loaded issue, and the truth is that it has a very loaded answer. I've often said that if we look around and we look at the church today, I don't see people emulating what it means to be called and what it means to actually be walking in the offices as we understand them in a biblical context. And I am open enough to admit that sometimes we don't necessarily look exactly like the Bible. And what I mean by that is we don't dress the same, and we don't live in the same time, and we don't live in the same culture. So things are not always going to be exactly the same. But then that raises the question, what does it mean to be called? If we're using the Bible as our guide for what it means to be in the fivefold ministry, what it means to look like an apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher, how does it look if we're called? How does it look, and how does somebody's life look if they are genuinely called of God? For this, I'm going to look at a biblical figure that none of us probably ever even think about. You would think I'd go over and talk about David or somebody real prestigious like Moses. No, I'm going to go and look at Hosea. And the reason I'm looking at Hosea is because he was a minor prophet, and for the record, that doesn't mean he was of less importance. They didn't run around calling him, oh, hey, minor prophet. It just means that his work was shorter than that of Ezekiel or Jeremiah or Isaiah. That's all that that means. It doesn't mean that he was of less importance or any less of a prophet, and there is no such thing as a major prophet or a master prophet or any of this other ridiculous nonsense that we're hearing today. But Hosea shows us something very interesting about being called. He was a man who had a call from God and who had a really difficult call from God. And we're going to just read in Hosea 1, and I'm going to start in verse 1. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, son of Beeri, during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the reign of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go to take yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord. So he married Gomer, daughter of Dibalaam, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel. Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call her Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer show love to the house of Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to the house of Judah, and I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but by the Lord their God. After she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo Ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. What does all this have to do with being called? Well, an awful lot. I mean, an awful lot of people who say that they're called to be this, or they're called to be that, or they're called in this tradition or that tradition, or they've got this anointing or that anointing. Well, I've never heard of anybody talking about the Hosea anointing. And that's fine, because I think all this stuff with all these people and all these calling down, all this stuff is spiritual channeling, and it's demonic. But the reality is that Hosea was different. Hosea literally lived his message. And if we look at other prophets, such as Ezekiel, such as Isaiah, such as Jeremiah, if we look at the works that these people did and the words that they preached, everything went together. They weren't talking about suffering and then living in an 8-bedroom mansion. They weren't talking about prosperity over and over and over again while all the people around them lived in poverty and in lack. They weren't people who lived that kind of an existence. In fact, they lived very difficult lives. They suffered greatly in their walk, and their lives matched what they did. Their lives became a living type of whatever it was that they were called to deliver to the nation or nations that they were called to proclaim their word to. And so I think that the bottom line of being called, as we can see in Hosea, is there needs to be some kind of a synergy. And I'll give you an example. If people are truly believing that they are called to preach a message about the family, we're going to see a lot more people with circumstances that are not ideal, that are difficult, that cost something of them, like Hosea lived. They're going to be people that live with separation and divorce. as Hosea and Gomer did. We're going to see people who deal with reconciliation as Hosea and Gomer did. And we may even see situations where that doesn't happen. But there are people who are living out what they're preaching. There are people that are saying, okay, this is what's coming, this is what's now, and I'm living this and experiencing this in my everyday life. And that's a very hard, difficult thing to live with, because we should be seeing types of the church. We should be seeing types of what people are going through. Not a bunch of people running around empty, calling themselves things, running around with big hats and robes and sitting in the best seats in the church. Let's not forget about what Jesus said about that people who are looking for that glory seeking already have their reward, because God has already seen it and that they have been rewarded of men. If you really believe you're called, you should be different. What you do should look different, and it should resemble what's coming forth from you in your life and your message. And so if you're going to be a person that's going to claim to be called, it's really good to step back and look at your life and stop expecting the most perfect or the best for yourself, which we often talk about. It means that you may not have the most perfect family life. It means you may not have the most perfect children or husband, and it certainly will probably mean that you don't always have the most perfect ministry. But it does mean that God will be with you, and God will be in it, and that God will be working forth to prove your calling on your behalf to those that you bring your message to. I thank you for watching the video blog today. Do you have a question or comment or something you'd like me to answer on air? If so, send it to me at questions@powerfortoday.org. Also, be sure to visit my website for Apostolic Fellowship International Ministries at www.powerfortoday.org. If you're in the Raleigh, North Carolina area and you would like to learn more about what we are doing at Sanctuary Apostolic Fellowship, also be sure to visit www.sanctuaryapostolicfellowship.org to learn more and to even come out and visit us. This is Apostle Dr. Leah Marino saying thank you for watching, and until next time, be blessed.